Considering threats against a school, there are three categories that we like to look at. One is the external threat. This is an individual who could be sitting out in his apartment somewhere, could be a radicalized, fundamental religious fanatic who just wants to do damage to a soft target. You don't know who this person is. He operates off the radar, and he could be looking at La Cañada simply as a soft target, not necessarily feeling that La Cañada or its schools are something that he wants to specifically attack, but that he wants to attack a school. A good example is in 2010, Kelly Elementary School in Carlsbad was attacked. They caught the guy, they asked him why he attacked this school, and he simply said, because it had a fence short enough for me to step over. So it wasn't Kelly Elementary School per se, but a school that was a soft target. So that's an external threat. We handle external threats through looking at surveillance actions, intelligence gathering actions, people who are showing up at the school who you've never seen before, somebody who comes to a basketball game claiming to be wanting to watch the basketball game, but then is found roaming the campus. These are all types of things that security, perimeter-based security, can handle. The next kind of threat, and much more common for a school, is the internal threat. This is a student or a teacher or a staff member who is going off the rails and is going to cause damage to the school because someone or a group of people at the school have somehow caused them harm, or in their perception have caused them harm. Now, this requires a different kind of security to detect an internal threat, because this individual is allowed permission to be at the school. What you can do with an internal threat, you can look at motive, whereas the external threat, you don't know the person's motive, and you will never detect the person's motive. With an internal threat, you can see bullying. You can see an individual who's flunked out. You can see an individual who's been expelled, or a teacher who's been fired. So you can look at motive for an inside threat, and that's what needs to get on the radar early. To that end, you want to put together something called an internal threat assessment team, which is a group of individuals across the community of the school, everybody from coaches to security people to teachers to administrators, even a janitor. If anybody saw Breakfast Club, you all know that the janitor was the guy that everybody talked to. All of these people have different eyes on the school and can tell different stories. And they will bring a person's name to this kind of a meeting and say, what does anybody know about this? And all of a sudden, the cracks start getting filled in on the picture of this individual, and they can decide whether that individual needs to be put on the radar. If you get that person on the radar early enough, you can move towards healing as opposed to reacting to an attack. That person can get the help that they need. It's a significant point that there's never been an active shooter at a private school. Okay? So the public school districts need to ask why. And it's probably because public schools are so large that kids tend to fall through the cracks. This is where the internal threat assessment team can really be helpful. The final category that we look at is what I call the insider-outsider threat. These are individuals who are connected to the community, but maybe not supposed to be there on a regular basis. This could be a parent or the spouse of an individual who works at the school, who suddenly shows up at the school and everybody sort of recognizes them, but hey, what are you doing here? That type of an individual. We saw this last year in San Bernardino, where a teacher was going through a divorce. Her husband showed up and he just walked right past the front office and ended up shooting her. In those situations, a teacher needs to come forward and tell the internal threat team or the principal or somebody, hey, I'm going through a divorce, I'm going through a bad time. If my husband shows up, don't let him in. One of the things that the FBI looks at in terms of active shooters, for example, is something called stressors. Stressors can be key pre-attack indicators that we can look for to try to help an individual out days, weeks, months, even years prior to an attack. I think it's significant to mention that Adam Lanza, who was the shooter at Sandy Hook, 4 years before shooting Sandy Hook, told somebody, I'm going to shoot up Sandy Hook and I'm going to kill my mother. And yet, nobody actually did anything about it. Stressors are events that happen in one's life that pull against the natural course that that person wants their life to go. That can be divorce, that can be financial crisis, it can be illness, it can be a multitude of different things. What the FBI has found out is that active shooters tend to have almost 4 different stressors happening in their life at one time before they become an active shooter. Concerning behaviors are the manifestations of stressors. You see it in loud, violent, angry conversation. You can see it in homework. You can see it in fistfights. You can see it in the way a person eats, the way the person stops taking care of themselves. These are all physical signs or concerning behaviors. And on average, an active shooter, for example, will show 4 to 7 concerning behaviors 6 months to 2 years prior to an attack.